I'm 80 years old, and I'm looking at a photograph right now. It's sitting on my kitchen table, a family photograph. Me, my wife Helen, and our 3 children, taken in 1998. We're all smiling, standing in the backyard. Summer afternoon. The kids are young, happy, innocent. I look at that photograph every single morning. And every single morning, I ask myself the same question. Why didn't I just say it? My name is George, and I want to tell you something today that I've never told anyone. Something that lived inside my chest for 80 years like a stone. Something that seems so simple, so small, so easy. 3 words, just 3 words. I love you. I never said them. Not to my wife, not to my children, not to my mother, not to my father, not to anyone. And that silence, that terrible heavy silence, it destroyed everything I ever had. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because to understand my story, you have to understand where I came from. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. My father, Harold, was a factory worker. Hard man, quiet man. He worked 6 days a week, came home tired, sat in his chair, watched television, went to bed. That was his life. He never hugged me, not once, not even when I was small, not on birthdays, not on Christmas, not when I was sick, not when I was scared. He never said, "I love you," never said, "I'm proud of you," never said, "Good job, son." But he worked, he provided. He kept the roof over our heads and food on the table. And in his mind, that was love. That was everything. My mother was warmer. She tried to show affection. But my father's coldness filled the house like a fog. It seeped into everything, into me. By the time I was a teenager, I was my father's son. Quiet, closed, hard. I thought showing emotion was weakness. I thought saying "I love you" was something for movies and greeting cards. Real men didn't say those things. Real men showed love through actions, through working, through providing. That's what I believed with every cell in my body. When I was 27, I met Helen. She was beautiful, not just in face, in spirit. She was warm and open and full of life. She laughed easily, cried at movies, hugged her friends, told people she loved them without hesitation. She was everything I was not. She fell in love with me somehow. I think she saw something beneath the surface, some tenderness I kept buried. She used to say, "George, I know you feel things deeply. I can see it in your eyes. You just don't know how to let it out." She was right. We got married in 1972. I was 29. She was 26. On our wedding day, at the altar, she looked at me with these shining eyes and said, "I love you, George." And I said, "Me too. Me too." Not "I love you." Not those words, just "me too." She smiled. She accepted it. She thought I'd open up over time. She thought marriage would soften me. She was patient, so incredibly patient. We had 3 children. A son, James, born in 1974. A daughter, Laura, born in 1977. Another son, Peter, born in 1980. I was a good father in the ways I understood. I worked hard. 2 jobs for a while when money was tight. Never missed a mortgage payment. Always put food on the table. Went to their school plays, watched their sports games, helped with homework. But I never hugged them. Not really. Not the way children need to be hugged. I never tucked them in and said "I love you." Never held them when they cried. When they came to me with scraped knees or broken hearts, I'd say things like, "You're fine. Toughen up. Don't cry." My father's words. My father's coldness. Passing from him to me, to them like a terrible inheritance. Helen used to watch me with the children and her face would fall. She'd try to compensate. She was warm enough for both of us. She'd hug them, kiss them, tell them she loved them constantly. But children need both parents. They needed me too. James, my oldest, was a sensitive boy. He loved art, drawing, painting. He'd show me his artwork with such hope in his eyes. And I'd look at it and say, "That's nice, and go back to my newspaper. Not, "That's amazing, son." Not, "I'm so proud of you." Not, "I love how creative you are." Just, "That's nice." I thought he knew I was proud. I thought actions spoke louder than words. I thought providing for him was enough. But he needed to hear it, and I never gave him that. Laura, my daughter, she was emotional like Helen. She'd hug me and say, "I love you, Daddy." And I'd pat her on the back awkwardly, 2 stiff pats, like patting a stranger. She stopped hugging me by the time she was 12. I noticed, and it hurt something in me. But instead of reaching out, instead of changing, I told myself it was just her growing up, becoming independent. Normal. It wasn't normal. She stopped because she got tired of reaching for someone who never reached back. Peter, my youngest, he tried the hardest. He was stubborn like me. He'd push, he'd provoke. He'd get into trouble just to get a reaction from me. Any reaction. Even anger was better than nothing. I thought he was difficult, a problem child, but he wasn't. He was just a little boy screaming in the only language I seemed to understand, and I still didn't hear him. The years passed, the children grew, and the distance grew with them. James left for college in 1992, art school. He'd finally followed his passion, and when he told me, I said, "Is that practical? Will you make money with art?" His face fell, just for a second. Then he composed himself and said, "I'll be fine, Dad." He graduated, got a job as a graphic designer, built a good life, married a woman named Carol, had 2 kids, my grandchildren, who I barely knew. But every time we talked on the phone, it was short, polite, surface level. "How are you, Dad?" "Fine. You?" "Good. Kids are good. Work is busy." "Okay. Good." That was it. That was my relationship with my son. 2-minute phone calls that said nothing, meant nothing, felt nothing, because I'd never built the foundation. I'd never said the words that would have made those phone calls feel like home. Laura got married in 1999. Nice man named Robert. I walked her down the aisle. She was beautiful, radiant. And at the reception, she danced with me. Father-daughter dance. She put her head on my shoulder, and I felt something surge in my chest. This overwhelming feeling, love, pride, grief for all the years I'd wasted being cold. I wanted to say it. Right there, on that dance floor. I wanted to say, "Laura, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. I'm sorry I was never the father you deserved." But the words wouldn't come. They got stuck somewhere between my heart and my mouth. That stone in my chest blocked them. So I just danced, in silence. She pulled back and looked at me, searching my face, looking for something, and I think she was hoping. Even then, after all those years, she was hoping. She smiled sadly, and I knew she hadn't found what she was looking for. Helen watched from the table. When I sat back down, she put her hand on mine and said, "She needed you to say something, George." I said, "She knows how I feel." Helen looked at me with those patient eyes, tired now, so tired. And she said, "How would she know, George? How would any of them know? You've never told them." I didn't answer, because I didn't have an answer. Peter stopped calling when he was 30. Just stopped. No fight, no dramatic ending. He just drifted away, like smoke, like he'd given up trying to connect with a wall. I called him once, left a voicemail. He texted back, "Busy right now, Dad. We'll call soon." He never did. Helen got sick in 2008. Breast cancer. She fought it hard. Surgery, chemotherapy, radiation. During those hard months, something cracked in me. Watching her suffer, watching her fight. Sitting in those hospital rooms day after day, holding her hand while she slept. I started talking to her more than I ever had. We'd sit in that hospital room for hours, and I'd tell her things about my childhood, about my father, about the fog of coldness I grew up in. She listened. She always listened. One night she looked at me and said, "George, why couldn't you do this before? This talking, this openness. Why did it take me getting sick?" And I started crying. Actually crying. For the first time in decades. I said, "I don't know. I don't know how to be different. I've tried. But it's like there's a wall inside me and I can't get past it." She squeezed my hand and said, "The wall isn't inside you, George. The wall is around you, and you built it brick by brick your whole life. And the only way to take it down is to just start talking. Just start saying what you feel. Even if it's hard. Even if it feels strange." I nodded. I promised her I would try. And I did try. For a while. I called James, had a real conversation. Asked about his art. Actually asked. He was surprised. Guarded at first. But we talked for 45 minutes. The longest conversation we'd had in years. I visited Laura. Spent a weekend with her and Robert. Played with my grandchildren. Actually got down on the floor and played. It felt awkward and stiff at first. But then something loosened. I even texted Peter, said, "I know we haven't talked much. I'd like to change that if you're willing." He texted back, "Okay, Dad, sure." Things were getting better. Small steps, but better. And then Helen's cancer came back. Stage 4. The doctor said maybe 6 months. Maybe a little more. We got 4. In those 4 months, I stayed by her side every moment I could. And we talked. We finally talked the way we should have talked for 40 years. She told me everything she'd kept inside. How lonely she'd been sometimes. How she'd cried alone at night, wishing I would reach for her emotionally. How she'd made excuses for me to the children. How she'd always believed the man she saw beneath the surface would eventually come out. And I told her things too. Things I'd never said. I told her she was the best thing that ever happened to me. That she made me a better man, even though I never showed it. That I was sorry. So deeply sorry. One night, 3 weeks before she died, she looked at me and said, "George, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." I said, "Anything." She said, "Did you love me? In your own way, in that closed heart of yours? Did you really love me? And for the first time in 40 years of marriage, for the first time ever." I said it. I said, "Helen, I love you. I have always loved you. From the moment I met you, every single day, I love you." She started crying and smiling at the same time. She said, "I know, George, I always knew, but it was so beautiful to finally hear it." She died 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, peacefully, holding my hand. And the last thing she said to me was, "Tell them, George, tell the children, don't wait. Please don't wait." Helen has been gone for 10 years now. I'm 80 years old. And the house is quiet. The same quiet that filled it for 40 years. But now it's a different kind of quiet. Before it was my choice, my coldness, my walls. Now it's just emptiness. After Helen died, I tried. I really tried to do what she asked me to do. I called James first. 2 weeks after the funeral, he answered, surprised to hear from me so soon. I said, "James, I need to talk to you, really talk." He said, "Okay, Dad." And I told him. I said, "I know I was never the father you needed. I know I was cold and distant, and I never said the things I should have said. But I need you to know something. Your artwork, from the very first drawing you ever showed me as a little boy, I was always proud, always amazed. I just didn't know how to say it." Silence on the line. Long silence. Then he said, "Dad," and his voice broke. Actually broke. He said, "Do you know how long I waited to hear that? Do you know how many years I drew and painted, hoping you'd say something like that?" I said, "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." We talked for 2 hours. 2 hours. More than we'd talked in the last decade combined. And at the end of the call, he said, "I love you, Dad." And I said, "I love you too, son." First time. First time in his 49 years of life that I said those words to my own son. I called Laura next. Same conversation, same tears, same release of decades of unspoken things. She said, "Dad, I used to practice what I'd say to you if you ever opened up. I had this whole speech prepared. But now that it's happening, I can't remember any of it. I just needed to know you cared." I said, "I care more than I ever showed, more than you can imagine. I love you, Laura. I always have." She sobbed. My daughter sobbed. And so did I. Peter was harder. He'd built his own walls by then, learned from his father. He was polite but guarded, said the right things but kept his distance. We're still working on it. It's slow, it's careful. But he answers when I call now, and last month he brought his family to visit me. His wife, his 2 children, my grandchildren, who barely knew my face. We sat at the same kitchen table where that photograph sits, and for the first time in as long as I can remember, this house felt like a home again. Small step, but everything. I'm telling you all this not to make myself sound like a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm an 80-year-old man who spent 70 years being emotionally blind and only opened his eyes when it was almost too late. Helen is gone. I never said those words to her for 40 years. I said them once, in those final weeks. And she deserved to hear them every single day of our marriage, every morning over coffee, every night before sleep, every ordinary Tuesday for 40 years. She deserved all of that. And I gave her silence instead. My children spent their entire childhoods reaching for a father who didn't reach back. I can't give them those years, those birthdays, those bedtime stories, those moments when a child needs to hear, "I love you," and feel truly safe in the world. I can't give any of that back. What I can do is be different now, at 80 years old. Be the man I should have always been. Show up, call, visit, say the words, say them out loud even when they feel strange, even when they feel uncomfortable. Because here's what I know now at 80 that I didn't know at 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. Love is not enough if it stays silent. I loved my wife completely. I loved my children more than my own life. I would have died for any one of them without a second thought. But they didn't know that, because I never said it. And because I never said it, they spent their lives feeling unloved by me, feeling like they weren't enough, feeling like they had to earn something from me they could never quite reach. My father's silence broke something in me, and my silence broke something in my children. That's what emotional walls do. They don't just protect you, they hurt everyone on the other side of them. My neighbor, an older man named Albert, he comes by for coffee sometimes. He's 85, 7 grandchildren, house full of noise and laughter whenever they visit. I told him my story one morning. He listened carefully. Then he said, "George, you know what the difference is between you and me? My father wasn't warm either. Grew up the same way you did. Cold house, no hugs, no words." I said, "Then how did you break the cycle?" He said, "My wife, same as yours. She told me early on, first year of marriage. She said, 'Albert, I need words. I need to hear it. I need you to say it. And if you can't learn to say it, I can't stay.' And I loved her enough to learn." I asked, "Was it hard?" He said, "First time felt like pulling a tooth. Second time was easier. 100th time felt like breathing." That stayed with me. It felt like pulling a tooth, because it does, for men like me. Men raised in silence and coldness. Saying "I love you" feels almost physically painful the first time. It feels exposed, vulnerable, terrifying. But here is what I want you to understand. What I need you to understand at 80 years old with whatever time I have left. That discomfort lasts a moment. That vulnerability lasts a second. But the damage of staying silent, that lasts a lifetime. My wife needed to hear it for 40 years. My children needed to hear it their entire lives. And I let my discomfort, my pride, my inherited coldness take priority over their deepest need. That was the greatest failure of my life, greater than any mistake I ever made, greater than any wrong decision, greater than anything. So let me speak to you directly now. You watching this. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you grew up in a cold house. Maybe nobody said those words to you, so you don't know how to say them to others. Maybe you think people just know. Maybe you think actions are enough. They are not enough. People need words. The people you love need to hear it from your mouth. They need to hear, "I love you." They need to hear, "I'm proud of you." They need to hear, "You matter to me. You are important. You are enough." Don't wait for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. The perfect moment is right now. Today. This minute. Call your children. Call your parents if they're still alive. Treasure every moment you still have with them. Call your brother or sister. Tell your spouse. Tell your friends. Say the words. Even if your voice shakes. Even if it feels strange. Even if you've never said them before in your entire life. Because I am 80 years old. I spent 70 of those years being silent. And I cannot get a single one of those years back. Not one day. Not one conversation. Not one bedtime when my children needed to hear that they were loved. And I said nothing. The 3 years after Helen died, when I finally started saying what I feel, when I finally started reaching out, they have been the most meaningful years of my entire life, full of real connection, real tears, real laughter, real love flowing in both directions. It took me 70 years and the death of my wife to get here. Don't pay that price. Please don't make my mistake. Tell them today, right now, before life gets in the way, before illness comes, before someone gets on a plane and doesn't come back, before a phone rings with terrible news, before it's too late. Because I'm 80 years old now. I don't know how many mornings I have left, how many times I'll look at that photograph on my kitchen table, how many more cups of coffee I'll drink in this quiet house. But I know this. Every morning I wake up, I pick up that photograph, and I talk to Helen. I tell her I'm trying. I tell her I love her. Still. Every day. And then I call one of my children, just to hear their voice, just to say I was thinking about them, just to say I love you. It took me 70 years to learn how to do that. Don't let it take you that long. Say it today. Say it now. Say it while the people you love are still here to hear it. Because I always thought they knew. But they needed to hear it. And so does everyone you love. Don't wait another day.